Hi, I'm Melissa Clark from NYT Cooking, and let's just get one thing straight. It is pecan. It is not pecan. It is pecan. Ask any Texan and they'll tell you. So, yeah, you know, my producers are asking me to rank my Thanksgiving pies, and I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm going to do it. Okay, you've got the 3 pies on the table. You've got pecan, apple, and pumpkin. It's Thanksgiving. You are only allowed 1 slice. I don't know why this is a made-up scenario, but just say that you're only allowed 1 slice. What do you go for? I go for pecan. I love it. It's my favorite. I mean, they're all delicious. I love them all. And pumpkin and pecan are like neck and neck for Thanksgiving. But pecan, for me, throws it over the edge because of the texture. I love that crunch. I love nuts. And for this recipe, I love the layers of flavor that I'm able to get into the pie. I use a combination of maple syrup and honey, and there's a little less goo and a lot more of the pecans because the pecans are the best part of a pecan pie, right? Another fun thing that I do for this pie is brown the butter. This is what I think. Anytime you're melting butter for a recipe, you have a brown butter opportunity. You can take it or not take it, right? So for this pie, I melt butter and I took it. If you add brown butter to nuts, you are bumping up that nut flavor. You're adding another richness, a layer of richness, just getting the most flavor possible. First step for pecan pie is to roll out your pie dough. Use any pie dough recipe that you like. You can even buy the dough. Shh, I won't tell anybody. What did Julia Child say when she dropped the chicken? When you're in your, nobody can see what you're doing when you're in your kitchen by yourself, except she said it with her Julia voice. When you're in your own kitchen, nobody can see what you're doing. So no one can see what kind of pie crust you are using. And make sure it's well chilled, that is important. First you have to kind of beat it into submission. So of the 3 Thanksgiving pies, pecan is actually the easiest because there's not much to do. To brown a little butter, mix a few eggs, and roll out your pie crust. And don't worry about the ragged edges because we're going to trim it later. You want to roll it out so that it is bigger than your pie dish by about 2 inches. And now I'm going to trim it so it's even. I'm just leaving enough overhang so that I can crimp it. So basically just a little bit past the rib of the pie dish. There's so many ways you can crimp a pie border. And I'm just going to do the classic. I'm just folding the dough over and then just pushing it with my finger. And now I'm just going to put this in the freezer for a minimum of 30 minutes, or you can do it the day before, or even a couple of days before. If you do it a couple of days before, you don't want it to dry out. So you want to just wrap it really lightly in plastic wrap. While the dough is in the freezer, just want to mix up your filling and start off with browning the butter. Ideally, when you're making brown butter, you want to use a lighter pan. If you have a lighter pan, just because it's easier to see the color of the butter. But I am going to give you a little tip to work around that when you have a dark pan. It's really easy. You just drizzle some on a white plate and then you can see the color. You can also tell, there's other ways to tell when your brown butter is ready. You'll certainly be able to smell it, and you'll also be able to hear it. What's really cool about brown butter, do you hear the sizzling of the butter? When that sizzling starts to quiet down, you know that you've cooked a lot of the moisture off the butter. This is going wild here. And then you know that the butter is almost ready. So when it gets quiet, go over and have a peek. I lowered the heat, don't worry. You know what they say about sitting around waiting for water to boil? Waiting for butter to brown. All right, we're getting there. See how it's starting to brown? Well, you can't smell it, but I can smell it. It smells like nuts. Yeah, see, that's perfect. You see how it's little dark brown flecks and the butter itself is brown? That's what you're looking for. And now I'm going to add maple syrup. And I'm going to continue to cook this for another 2 minutes. And what I'm doing is thickening the maple syrup. So I'm cooking some moisture. We just cooked moisture out of the butter. We're going to cook more moisture out of the syrup. Okay, and then after 2 minutes, just turn it off. And then we're going to let that cool for just about 10 minutes. And the honey actually helps cool it down. The reason we want to cool this is because we don't want it to cook the eggs, and we're about to add eggs to the filling. So I have brown sugar, but I also have maple sugar. And the maple sugar is just to accentuate the maple flavor that we already have coming from the syrup. However, maple sugar is expensive and hard to find. So if you can't find it or you don't want to splurge, it's perfectly fine to use more brown sugar. I mean, it's delicious either way, you can't go wrong. Bourbon is optional, but it is so good. I really like bourbon in a pecan pie, but if you don't, leave it out, add a little extra vanilla. And all I'm doing is making sure that there are no lumps. So I have pecan halves here, and I'm going to put them in the pie. You could mix them into the filling. I like to put them in the pie because then you can turn them over and they just look a little bit nicer when you put them in rather than just stir them into the filling. Okay, so this butter is cool at this point and I'm just gonna whisk it in. I wanna get all those little brown bits from the bottom of the pan. You want them. You want all those little bits of flavor. And then just pour this right over your pecans. And then they're gonna float to the top while the pie bakes. And now this is going into the oven onto my preheated baking sheet. Pie has cooled completely. As you can see, it had puffed up a lot in the oven right when you took it out, and it has kind of stabilized. The nuts are just beautiful. They look like they're candied, which is what you want in a pecan pie. I'm very happy with the way this looks. Let's cut in. It's perfect. You can see the crust is baked through. Look at that beautiful golden brown color on that crust. You can see the ratio of nuts to goo. It's less goo than usual and more nuts, and that's exactly the way I want to eat my pecan pie. What can I say? She's my favorite. I love her. It tastes like honey. It tastes like maple. But most of all, it tastes deeply of pecans. This is a good pie. This may be my favorite pie, but my second favorite pie, and they're very close, is pumpkin. And I'm gonna show you how to make it next week. And here's the secret. There's actually no pumpkin in it.